Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Say what? Say what? Say what? One more time.
We commence the proceedings with our signature segment, Say What? As we roll out a virtual assembly line of wacky, astonishing, damnable, and ultimately revealing things uttered by politicians and the chattering class. If you had to pick 2 words or 1 phrase to summarize the commencement of the official impeachment inquiry, which moved from a secret room in the Capitol to the House chamber this week, and this would also neatly summarize the entire Trump presidency, that phrase would be Irregular Channel. The Democrats' supposed bombshell witness, the star witness, the guy Democrats hoped would captivate the nation on opening day of impeachment season, Ambassador Bill Taylor, spoke of the regular channel of diplomacy, the kind he and his fellow career diplomats are accustomed to, and an irregular channel, which translated means Trump's personal initiatives, which so often are at odds with official long-standing diplomatic protocol. And it's that tension that drove this entire exercise, the tension between the way things have always been done around Washington and the Trump way, which is to upset the establishment apple cart, which is the very thing he was elected to do. Taylor appeared as a respectable establishment figure, but betrayed the usual swamp sensibilities when discussing Trump bypassing him and other foreign policy experts.
I wrote that withholding security assistance in exchange for help with a domestic political campaign in the United States would be crazy. Following the call with President Trump, the member of my staff asked Ambassador Sondland what President Trump thought about Ukraine. Ambassador Sondland responded that President Trump cares more about the investigations of Biden, which Giuliani was pressing for.
So there you go. Trump is crazy. And then later he heard third hand from a staffer through an ambassador who overheard a phone call that Trump cares only about investigating Biden. It's like he heard it through the grapevine, third hand, and is shocked. Shocked. In fact, the whole narrative, the whole impeachment inquiry is nothing more than a glorified he said, she said, as Republican Jim Jordan effectively revealed in questioning the star witness, Ambassador Taylor, about the phone call that's supposed to be the basis for reversing the 2016 presidential election.
Ambassador, you weren't on the call, were you? You didn't listen on President Trump's call and President Zelensky's call?
I did not.
You've never talked with Chief of Staff Mulvaney?
I never did.
You never met the president?
That's correct.
You had 3 meetings again with Zelensky and it didn't come up.
And 2 of those they had never heard about as far as I know.
And President
There was no reason for it to
President
come up.
Zelensky never made an announcement. This is what I can't believe. And you're their star witness. You're their first witness.
Mr.
You're the
Jordan,
guy. You're the guy based on this. Based on, I mean, I've seen church prayer chains that are easier to understand than this.
So then the question becomes, was there a legitimate reason for Trump wanting Biden investigated? Hello, the guy's son profited hugely, $50,000 a month at least, and a spot on the board of Ukraine's biggest energy company, despite no experience in Ukraine, no experience in energy. A deal cut right after Biden left Ukraine. And then Biden threatened to do exactly what Trump's being accused of, cut off funding for Ukraine unless they fired the prosecutor investigating, wait for it, Hunter Biden's company. No basis for investigation? Yeah, right. No basis. Another question. How do you impeach a president for something he might have done but didn't? They claim there was a quid pro quo, lethal aid, and a White House meeting for the Ukrainian President Zelensky in return for a publicly announced investigation of Joe Biden. But the investigation hasn't happened, and the lethal aid was delivered on schedule. But it's all more than enough for Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, and the Democrats to ignore the transparent corruption of their leading presidential candidate, ignore the fact that aid was in fact delivered to Ukraine by Trump, and ignore that no investigation was announced and go ahead and pull the trigger on impeachment anyway, less than a year before a presidential election with not a single Republican vote in the House and no prospects for conviction in the Senate. Now, in contrast, 33 Democrats voted for the impeachment inquiry into President Clinton, and every Republican except 4 voted for the impeachment inquiry into President Nixon. Now, Schiff understands that he may get impeachment, but he's not going to get a conviction and removal from office, barring new bombshell information, which would have long since been leaked to the impeachment obsessed elite media if it was there. So he's already, Schiff, trying to lay the groundwork for the same charge the Democrats came up with when the Russia collusion hoax was laid bare: obstruction.
If the president can simply refuse all oversight, particularly in the context of an impeachment proceeding, the balance of power between our two branches of government will be irrevocably altered.
See what he did there? And that was in his opening statement, emphasized Trump's refusal to let his closest advisors testify. So when outrage over the phone call between Trump and the Ukrainian president dissipates, as is already happening, he can always fall back on obstruction. But when the ranking Republican on the Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, delivered his opening statement, he talked about the Russia collusion hoax and the endless witch hunts against Trump that have come up empty.
We're supposed to take these people at face value when they trot out a new batch of allegations. But anyone familiar with the Democrats' scorched earth war against President Trump would not be surprised to see all the typical signs that this is a carefully orchestrated media smear campaign.
The lawyer for the alleged whistleblower, and everyone in D.C. knows who he is, but pretends that they don't, including Adam Schiff, who specifically denied knowing who the whistleblower is, even though he contacted Schiff's staff first with his complaint. Such a bold-faced lie. So, the lawyer for this guy was calling for Trump's impeachment the same month Trump was inaugurated, almost 3 years ago. That would be January of 2017. But never mind that. Here's a question no one seems to be asking. Democrats still claim to this day that Trump is an agent of Russia and Vladimir Putin. If that's true, why in God's name would Trump be sending lethal aid to the country Russia's trying to overrun? Lethal aid for Ukraine, by the way, refused by the Obama administration for all 8 years. But you know, we've seen this swamp revolt against a president's irregular channels before. Take you back to President Ronald Reagan, whose most famous single statement was, "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall." The State Department tried repeatedly to remove those words from Reagan's statement at the Brandenburg Gate in Berlin, but he persisted, and the wall came down 2 years later. Likewise, official Washington was appalled when Reagan walked away from a deal that would eliminate U.S. and Soviet nuclear weapons up in Reykjavik, Iceland, because he would have had to dismantle his much vaunted Strategic Defense Initiative, commonly known as Star Wars, which had the Soviets on the run and killing their economy to keep up. The State Department was outraged. A few years later, the Soviet Union ceased to exist. That, my friends, is the politics of personal diplomacy, or Lone Ranger diplomacy, if you will, from Reagan to Trump. And that is the resistance we will witness in perpetuity from an unelected foreign policy and domestic establishment that truly believes they, not the elected president, are the repositories of wisdom. They, not the elected president, are the ones who know best. And they, not the elected president, should be deciding what America's foreign policy should be. Problem is, that's the exact reverse of what the voters voted for in 2016 and may well reaffirm in 2020. So this whole impeachment fiasco is having a heavy downdraft on the Democrats' presidential race. Is impeachment their only issue? Is it enough? And why are more candidates entering the race this late in the game?